Welcome back to W3, Women Winning Worldwide, where we help women create a better life while saving time doing the process, while celebrating everything that women are at their core and their greatest contributions. Connecting you to them eliminates the time for you to have to figure it out on your own. These winning women will teach you how to have the life that you want in a fraction of the time. Now let's win. There are many times when we can't rely on how others view us, but then there are times when seeing ourselves through the loving lens of someone else can remind us of the gifts that we give without realizing. We don't always recognize that we are blazing trails and making an impact because we are the ones immersed in it, but letting someone else remind you can give you that little extra fuel to propel you forward. I just recently posted on my social media that one of my business partners rewarded her daughter for achieving honor roll with allowing her to attend an event, but it was to meet me. We had a big event in Ohio, and her daughter has been wanting to meet me, little old me, Chanelle Burt. I was so excited to know that this little girl had been working so hard just to meet Chanelle Burt. And so when we got to meet, she said, you know, you're my role model because you are so independent. Now, I don't know about you, but that made my heart smile. And my husband was behind me. I said, well, I am independent, but I don't like saying that too much around him. But that just made me feel so good knowing that outside of my children, other children are watching. And that just lets you know to just keep going. You never know who you're inspiring that will never give up just because of you. Today we're shining a spotlight on the Color Vision. Established by Mia Davis in 2017, the Color Vision is a woman-led empowerment organization with a mission to improve fairness and equity in creative industries. The organization's aim is to support women of color with training, mentorship, and resources to gain access to equal opportunities in employment, business, and higher education. Alongside another previous W3 Woman Winning featured organization, Black Girls Vote, the Color Vision also hosts an annual Dope Black Girls Brunch. Mia Davis and his all-female board and staff are true definitions of women winning, so be sure to follow and support their events, initiatives, and if you are creative, maybe consider a membership. You can follow them at The Color Vision on social platforms. Let's talk about our wins for the week. Now, I'm going to talk about two because one, I got to hang out. I was outside. I was out with my line sisters last week, and we had such a great time for one of their birthdays. Listen, I'm from Baltimore. I never danced to go-go music. If you know what I'm talking about, you can relate. And so I was out with them just dancing, having a great time to all of the different music that was being played. But it was so great catching up with them because I don't really have a lot of time to spend with them. So that was a huge win for me. But another one was successfully transferring my son from his zone school to a school we really wanted him to go to. Now, parents, we know we have to advocate for our kids. He was in an environment where I don't know what's going on with public schools these days, but we had to get him out. And we went through the process for our change of school assignment. We were told that it possibly could get denied and we would probably have to appeal. But how many of you know that no man can shut a door that God has opened for you? So we kept calling and we were talking to everybody we needed to. And after 3 weeks of being home from school, our son was finally approved. So huge wins for the week for me. I'm so excited about it. And I don't know about you, but look, let's keep celebrating your wins. Today we're wearing a sweatshirt by Mess in a Bottle. Now this is a t-shirt company with messages that gives a voice to the voiceless. Black owned, woman owned, and message driven. I've been following this brand for quite some time. I love the messages that she has. It's simply a representation of a lot of the different things that we want to say. And today I am actually wearing as strong as the woman next to me. It is Women's History Month. Now we need to celebrate all of the women that have shaped us to be the women that we are today. Mess in a Bottle can be followed at Mess in a Bottle on Instagram or messinabottle.com. One of the things that W3 will always do is highlight women-owned brands. So, to be featured on our Women Winning Worldwide podcast, submit a direct message to W3 Community on Instagram. Andrea Wolf is the founder and CEO of Uppermost Strategies, where she works with startups to bring emerging technologies to market, primarily through strategy and public policy. Andrea started her career as an attorney at Patton Boggs LLP, where she practiced in the litigation and public policy groups. In previous positions and initiatives, she has also been instrumental in maximizing early detection for breast cancer, improving access to STEM and financial literacy education for girls, providing accurate sexual health education for girls, and curtailing substance abuse among teens. Now, that's a mouthful, right? But let's head over to Washington, D.C. to discuss policies, philanthropy, and motherhood as we celebrate this woman winning during Women's History Month. So good to see you. Well, I am excited about being here with you today. This is such a look, and I love your floors.
Oh,
but this is about your amazing life, and I know we are talking about that today. So if you can kind of show me a little bit, that would be awesome.
We have some sort of artifacts, if you will, of things that reflect who I am and what I care about. So as you can see here, there's some pictures of me and my husband. This is a what we call tzedakah box that represents our commitment to giving. This is a picture of me and my two youngest daughters with some horses. I was always a rider, and I love animals, and so I can tell. I think that incorporating sort of God's creatures in many ways brings out the best in us, and I want my family to be raised, you know, very connected to nature. This was an award that I got from Jewish Women International as a woman to watch back in 2016. And I was really proud of it because it highlights women from a range of industries and places. But my mom and I were the first and still only mother-daughter pair to be awarded. She was awarded, I think it was 15 years before I was.
Oh, wow.
So I remember coming to hers, and then me and my daughters were at mine. It was really cool.
That is so amazing. I love all of this because so many times we just check the box and say, job well done, and we just move on. But you having this, all of this stuff right here, especially this right here, though, with you and your mom, just that sentimental moment, you will always remember that, and you have something that marks that accomplishment for you. So not only for you, but your daughters will see it. So it's so very important that we do have these keepsakes per se, so that we can remember the moment, and the moment allows you to remember the feeling as well. Well, this is all amazing. Thank you so much for showing us a preview of who you are as we get into your conversation today. We are so excited to hear from Andrea Wolf during this Women's History Month. And we're going to dive right into your story, how you can help more women save time and live better. So I'm excited. Are you excited?
Thank you.
All right, let's go. Let's get into it. Well, today we are here with Andrea Wolf, and guess what? It's Women's History Month. So we were thinking about who we wanted to highlight this month, and we get to talk about business, philanthropy, home life. She has 4 daughters, so I can't wait for us to get into all of that. But Andrea, before I start to ask you all the amazing questions that we want to know today, we want to know, who is Andrea Wolf?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me. I am honored to be here on this Women's History Month with all of you. As you heard, women, little and older, are a big part of my life. I am just about 40 years old, and I live in Washington, D.C. I am most proudly the mother of 4 wonderful young women, and I'm married to a very, very supportive husband. I think we'll delve more into the details later, but I've had a really exciting and varied career doing everything from law, nonprofit leadership, and now business. So thank you for having me.
Well, we are excited to have you. We know that you have had a lot to do with the Brim Foundation. We will talk about your personal story as well, because you have helped a lot of women when it comes to preventing and discovering breast cancer early on. So we want to talk about how you even got into that world, but it's probably because of your personal story, right?
Yeah.
If you can kind of talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, like so many things in life, some of it was very deliberate and some of it was really an accident. So I started my career as a lawyer. I was at a big law firm doing some public policy work. And then I became the director of public policy for a national nonprofit focusing on girls' education, mostly low-income girls, and doing after-school education. That was a really exciting time. But I wanted to do something more, and I wanted to lead something myself. And so on the personal side, that was around the same time that I had my own prophylactic mastectomies, because breast cancer had hit my family very hard. My grandmother was 33 when she got breast cancer. She was actually told that she had 6 months to live. She lived for another 42 years.
Wow.
But my mom was 12, and it had a really profound impact on her. So she went to medical school and became a breast imager herself. And I think actually appeared on the show.
Yeah, she was on season 1, yes.
And she knew that she was likely to get breast cancer, found her own breast cancer at age 37. And by the time I was facing my 30s, I thought, I don't want to be the third generation of women in my family to go through this, to have my kids go through this. So I had prophylactic mastectomies at age 30 between my second and third daughters.
Now, before we move forward, though, a lot of us don't know exactly what that means.
Sure.
Okay, so if you can kind of tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So women who are at really high risk of developing breast cancer because of usually a genetic mutation or just a really strong family history can choose to have surgery that removes their breast tissue before they get breast cancer. Now, it is not guaranteed that anyone will, so it's a personal decision, and it's not right for everyone. But I always knew that I wanted to do that because I preferred that than dealing with even just the fear of getting it all the time. I just wanted the peace of mind, and so I did, and then had 2 more girls after that. And so professionally, after I did that, I wanted to give back. I wanted to find a way of saying thank you, for that outcome. And so I joined the board of the Brim Foundation. And I really just meant to join the board. And they said, well, can you help us find somebody? We want to hire our first staff person to lead this. And I said, sure. And we interviewed people. And I kind of turned around 3 times and had the position myself. And so not really sure how that happened, but it was a wonderful 6.5 years of leading the foundation.
Okay. Now, there may be some other women watching that are in that same situation. You had your personal reasons for wanting to do that. Is there any particular advice that you could give to them? Maybe because of your personal decision, what could you tell them as far as maybe thinking about it that they may not know about that option per se?
Yeah, for sure. So for women everywhere, regardless of their risk level, the best and most important thing to do is to get screened and to know how high risk someone is. So I come from an Ashkenazi Jewish family. Our demographic is particularly high risk, especially around genetic mutations. And Black women are very high risk, actually, of dying from breast cancer. And so if you know, especially if you know that you're from a demographic that's higher risk, find out what is your family history. Make sure that you get screened. And then if you are very high risk through genetic testing or whatever else, explore all the options and figure out what's best for you and your family.
Yeah. Now, you have helped create the country's first ride-sharing programs so that women could get breast cancer screenings.
Yep.
How does that make you feel that you have had such an impact to help women so that they could, have more preventative ways for them to get tested early, get screened, all of that stuff? So how does that even make you feel that you were able to do that?
It makes me feel really proud.
Yeah.
It was born out of a philosophy that I really try to live by, which is just because I may have access to certain resources doesn't mean that everybody does.
Right.
And we really it is incumbent upon me and my children to think about those who might have barriers that we may not face. And so that's where it came out of. I mean, I was involved with the Brem Foundation, and they were reaching out to, underserved communities, people with health disparities. But I thought, we're focusing on the exams themselves, right? We're paying for MRIs or biopsies or whatever it is, but there are a lot of challenges before they even get to be having an exam.
Yes.
And one of those is transportation. Now, there's also childcare, there's also time off of work. And I think a lot of those things can be solved through public policy, which is another aspect of what I try to do. But I said, how simple is this? We have Uber, we have Lyft, we have, ride-hailing companies. Why don't we dedicate some resources to getting people to their screenings? Now, Uber and Lyft both have done a wonderful job at creating ride-sharing programs to get people to cancer treatment. But my thought was, why do we need to wait till after they have such late disease? Let's support them on the front end so that they can go. And actually through that work, I learned about some really horrible stories. So particularly in Hispanic and Latina communities, when people within those communities know that women can't get rides, they charge a lot.
Wow.
And they take advantage of them, and the women don't realize that there might be an alternative. So they charge $100, $200, $300 to get to the doctor, and then they have to work another job, or she can't put food on the table or whatever it is. And I thought, this has to stop.
Yeah.
So we teamed up with Lyft. And I'm no longer leading the Brem Foundation, but the Brem Foundation is still actively offering rides every day to women, mostly immigrants, who can't get to and from screenings.
Yeah, this is something that I would love to dig more into, because our W3 Cares organization, we support women in need, whether it's financial assistance, educational resources, volunteer opportunities. But for us to help raise some funds, to be able to help more women subsidize, I guess, the cost for these programs, the rides that you're talking about, I don't think people really think about the costs when it comes to stuff like that. Even though programs may be in place, maybe someone may not be eligible per se, but there's a lot of different costs associated with even giving that type of help.
Yep.
So with W3 Cares, this is definitely something that we could look into with partnering so that we could help more women, because it's all about helping women save time, live better. But this is just another aspect of that.
Totally. And actually, it brings me to tell you a little bit about something that I'm working on now, which is slightly different, but also something that's really been inspiring to me. So after the Brem Foundation, I started my own company. A lot of the corporate partners that we were working with said, Andrea, can you help us? We like what you're doing with your website. We like what you're doing with your policy work, with your marketing. And I said, sure. And it took on a life of its own. And I thought, you know what? This is another way to reach people. It's another way to impact change. I believe very strongly that the business sector, right, that for-profit entities, especially ones that are innovating in healthcare, in humanitarian aid, really are able to change people's lives. So I started this company, and I was working with women's health companies, which I still am, and I'll tell you a bit more about later on. But my daughter actually inspired me to start being involved with an organization called Innovation Africa. And Innovation Africa is a nonprofit that uses technologies to bring clean water and electricity to villages across Africa. And my daughter, for her bat mitzvah project, raised $18,000 to bring light to a school in Uganda. My oldest daughter, Eliana.
Okay.
And I learned about this organization, and I said, this is something special. And so I looked into it more, And even after she was done her project, I said, I can't let go of this. So I reached out to the CEO, who's also an amazing, strong woman, started this when she was 20. And I said, I have to work for you. I really want to help you. And I want you to reach more people. No one in the United States knows about you. And she said, okay. So she said, no. And I said, yes. And she said, no. And I said, yes. And then finally I said, yes. And she said, yes. And so I said, okay. So she said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to tell people what you're doing because no one knows. And she said, well, only if you come with me to Africa because you won't really understand unless you see. And I said, okay. So in November, I went to Malawi with her. Her name is Sivan. And I saw firsthand what really happens there. And no other charity on earth is providing water the way she is. So we went to these villages in the middle of nowhere. And I thought, these people are the most different people from me on earth, right? They don't look like me. They don't speak my language. They have no money. They have no bathroom. They have no trash collection. They have no really real education. They don't have water, right? Like it's so different.
Wow.
And yet when we went there, and we went there to actually turn on the tap for the first time in this particular village, and you know, they never had clean water before. We went to where the women were getting the water in the ground. It's a dirty water hole is really what it is. And we spoke to them with a translator. And I said, well, it's emotional even for me now. I said, well, what does this change for you? And these were women with babies strapped to their back and babies strapped to their front. And they said, well, our daughters are going to be able to go to school. We're never coming back here. And I said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, when we come here, our daughters and I often get raped. Men hide in the bushes. They rape us, we get bitten by snakes, but it's our only way to get water, so we have to come back. But because your organization is here, we never will come back here again. And my daughters can go to school. And I just kept thinking about my daughters. And I thought, I'm looking at this woman from a completely different way of life, and yet we get each other.
Yes.
She's a mother. Like that's the core of it. Like, and it was such a deep human connection. And I thought, wow, people need to understand what kind of transformative impact this is on these women. And so we use solar panels to pump water from deep under the earth, and it transforms African villages. We've helped 4.2 million people. And we put electricity in schools because otherwise they study by kerosene lamp. And we spoke to the kids, and they have dreams. They want to be pilots and bankers and doctors and things they can be if they have electricity and water. So I am now working very hard, among other things, as I build my own business to help spread the word about this organization. And it is amazing.
That is amazing. And it doesn't matter what we look like, where we're from, our backgrounds, nothing. We are all the same at our core. And that's what we try to emulate here for W3, Women Winning Worldwide. Now, one thing that you touched on was that your daughters are watching you. They see you, and they are now wanting to do things on the philanthropy side because of mom. So you are that example. Outside of all the other examples they probably have in school and in the media, what ideas or what do you want them to take from you so that they can go out and be better people and form their own type of organizations? What do you want them to really get from you?
So I have two thoughts when you ask that question. The first is actually about my parents, not my kids. As you know, my mom is an inspiration to so many, including to me. My father and I are also very close, and he has a philosophy that guides him, which is you have to have a life well lived, right? And I want my life to be a life well lived, and that's what I want to show to them. But I also do feel that they inspire me every day, right? Yes, I am constantly watched, and I feel that. And they see, and I'm not perfect, and they see when I trip up too. But they remind me that the essence of living a life well lived is also not losing the silliness and the joy and the energy that children have, and not having life sort of socialize them out of that. And so it is a give and take with me and my daughters. They are watching me, and I want to be a role model. And so much of why I do what I do is because I feel that I am being watched, right? And I kind of say every morning, not who am I, but who do I want to be today? And you might laugh at me, but I think of people like Mary Poppins and Maria from The Sound of Music, and I say, I kind of want to be like her, right? Like, that's the aura that I want to go through life with, and I want them to see that and see that there's a joy to it. In terms of the philanthropy piece, look, we live in a world that's a strange place right now. And I think that social media and screens and phones are going to be looked at the way now we look back on smoking from the 1960s. I think we're going to look back at this era and say, what were we doing to ourselves and our children? The way we look back on secondhand smoke and firsthand smoke and say, what were we doing to ourselves and our children, you know? And so I try very hard for them to be focused on what goes on in this home, in our house, with me and my husband and their grandparents and my siblings, versus social media, versus the texting and the nonsense, frankly, that I think has a profound impact on their self-image, on their ability to relate properly to the real problems in the world, and not feel that pop culture or whatever it is they're watching on YouTube and who knows what are that important.
Right.
You know, like, there are real issues to
Real
solve.
issues.
And I saw it in Africa, and I saw it at the Bremen Foundation, and like, that's how we should spend our limited time on this earth.
Now, you have mentioned you have done a lot of policy work. What do you think women need from policymakers today? Because you even had a big part in a bill that got passed, right? And for women in D.C. so that they could get treated for dense breasts or screened for dense breasts.
Yeah.
If you can kind of go into that. But also, what do you think we need from policymakers more so today?
Sure. Well, I started my career as a lawyer. And so that piece of my training and my personality is intertwined throughout everything that I do. So while I was at the Bremen Foundation, I realized, yes, we can educate woman by woman, and we can give rides woman by woman. But to have really, really large scale, broad impact on thousands, maybe millions of people, we need to change policies. And so I noticed that DC did not have a bill that required insurance coverage for screenings for women with dense tissue through ultrasound, through MRI, things like that. And I said, well, that needs to change. There's so many other states that have it. And so I went to the DC Council and I said, why don't you have a bill? There are, I think at that time, there were 35 other states that had it. And they said, well, no one bothered to ask. And I said, well, okay, I'm here asking, and I'm going to write it, and we're going to get it passed. And they said, fine. And so that's what happened. I wrote it and advocated for it. And I think advocacy for women at the individual level and the public collective level is critical to being strong and moving the needle. And other companies saw what I did here in DC and said, hey, can you help us in Wisconsin? Can you help us in Texas? Can you help us in Ohio? And so I started to do that all around insurance coverage for these extra screenings, which, by the way, is a matter of life and death, especially for lower income women who can't pay out of pocket, right? If you can pay for the $350 test out of pocket, it's not great, but it's also okay. But some women don't have that option. And so I started doing that. And I continue to believe that policy is critical in women's rights and women's health. And so I'm actually still really involved in working on policy efforts around women's health. Specifically, I'm working on an ovarian cancer project. We've learned that often ovarian cancer starts in the fallopian tubes and not in the ovaries. And a lot of women don't know that if you take your fallopian tubes out, you can potentially prevent ovarian cancer. Now, tube tying or tubal ligation is the #1 form of surgical sterilization in the country. About 700,000 of them happen every year, and 27 million women living in the United States have had their tubes tied. Well, if we convert those tubes tied to tubes out, then we will save a lot of lives. A lot fewer women will get ovarian cancer.
Wow.
And it has the same physiological impact. It's the same birth control. It's the same everything else. And it's become even more common now after the new Supreme Court decision that people are choosing this option. And I am working on an effort to make sure that insurance covers what's called a salpingectomy. Salpingectomy is the tubes out instead of tubal ligation, which is tube side. And I want to go state by state and make sure that insurance covers that, because it's not like early detection with breast cancer. It's prevention. Like, they will not get it.
Right.
So I believe in policy. I have a meeting on the Hill next week with a new congresswoman who wants to do more on the women's health side. And I think if we get more insurance coverage for screenings, for preventative measures, then women can live their best life. Then they're going to be healthier. Yeah. It's true for everything. It's not just for women. It's for education. It's for, immigration. Regardless of where you stand politically, policy work at the state and national level can have a profound and large impact beyond an individual level. So.
Now, we are having an amazing conversation during Women's History Month, thinking about everything that you have been involved with, where we didn't know that, right? But for our health, she literally fights for our rights and puts together policies. And one of the things that my husband has always told me is to simply just ask. Okay? And by you just asking, look at the ripple effect of what has happened in different states because of just asking for something for us. But you do a lot, policy-wise, philanthropy-wise. You're also a mother of 4 girls. And I know a lot of us are wondering, how are you doing all this? How are you changing policies and making a difference in Africa and putting together all of these different programs? How are you doing this and staying sane with 4 daughters?
So sometimes I ask myself the same question. I say, how am I doing this? I do have a couple small secret things that I am committed
we
to
want to know the secrets.
They're not so secret. I'll tell everybody. So one thing that I prioritize is every morning, between 6 and 7, I go outside by myself, sometimes with a daughter, and I either run or walk, usually in the woods. And that is my 35, 40 minutes every day. I love nature. I need to be in nature. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me healthy. I get to exercise and breathe fresh air. And my husband laughs at me because I go when it's freezing and when it's wet, and I just don't care. I need to go outside every day. And I think that that's critical to happiness. I think with these screens, we go inside and inside and inside, and it's so much easier to do that. So for me as a person, as a mom, that's sacred. Nothing gets in the way of that. We are also a religious family. So we're Jewish, we're modern Orthodox. Every Saturday from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday, that is our sacred time. We go to synagogue every Saturday morning as a family. Every Friday night we sit down together to a traditional meal. And it really keeps us connected and bonded. We're not allowed to use phones, computers, TVs, cars, anything. It sounds very primitive, but it's actually really important. Yeah. So that helps. And I will say that with all of the things that I love to do professionally, my proudest role is as a mom. And it's my priority. And I don't say I balance, because I don't think there's really balance. I think there are choices. And I like to try to be very present in whatever that choice is at that moment of the day. So if I'm working, I want to be working. And if I'm being a mom, I want to be a mom. 4 kids is a great number. It's also a big number, as you know. You're also the mom of 4. Yes. And I will tell you, I make a very, very deliberate effort to do things one-on-one with each. Yes. They are so different, and they deserve to be treated differently and not as a pack. And so I try at least once or twice a month to take each girl alone with me to do something so I can look her in the eye and talk to her and know that she understands that I'm still listening and I hear her and not just trying to get through the day, which is what it feels like. I don't sleep as much as I would like. I do think sleep is really important, and I don't find enough time for it. But
yeah, I do have 4 kids. I have girl, boy, and they're all different. They're all going through different things.
Yep.
My 15-year-old, actually my 9-year-old, she schedules her own mommy and daughter dates, daddy and daughter dates. She'll write it on our board so everybody in the house knows when it's her time. But I have done that with my sons as well because that's important for them. And my oldest, she's in the stage where she wants to just be with her friends and talk on the phone. But I asked her just the other day, do you want to have a Mommy and Morgan day? Because we do it with the other kids. My husband's always with my son at baseball, so we're doing it with other kids, but I kind of got away from it with her, and it's very important. She's been going through some teenage stuff, and we try to have a relationship with each of our kids where we can be open and honest and have that communication, because both my husband and I, we've learned that in every relationship, communication is important. And we've worked on our communication with each of our kids because we can't talk to them the same way either. And so that is very important, having that one-on-one time.
So important.
And it's also important that we have help when we need it. Right?
Yes.
So
I do want to talk about help. I want to say one thing about the one-on-one time. And even if you're not a mother, I think it's true of people in your life, regardless of what your relationship is. There are some of my kids who can sort of disappear into the woodwork and wouldn't demand that I pay attention to them if I didn't. And there are some that are constantly begging for my attention.
Right.
And it's equally important. And the ones who kind of seem to be happy keeping to themselves appreciate it at least as much when you remember that they're there. And that's true of friends, it's true of parents, it's true of spouses. Like, you know, even if someone's not jumping up and down and begging for you to spend time with them because it does not feel like we have a lot of time, it's really important.
Right.
Now, I don't want to ignore your question about help, because help is so important. I think we women feel that if we're not doing everything ourselves, then we're not good enough or not doing it right. I do often feel that I do a lot myself, but I also am very blessed that I have an amazing, amazing nanny who really understands how our house runs, who my children are, and she and I have a really loving relationship. This goes way back, though, to the way I was raised. Both my parents are doctors, so they also didn't have tons of time at home, and were very focused on us. So we had a nanny for 21 years who I know my mother relied on. It was like her wife, right? Like that's what I have here. And she was so special to us that she was with us for 21 years. When I got married, she said, when you have a child, I'm going to come back to work. She retired, and take care of your child for the first year. And I said, who's having children? That's crazy. And she did. She came back from Trinidad. She stayed for a year, and then she went home and she kept her word. Sadly, she passed while I was pregnant with my third, and we actually named our third after her. So that's how important help is to us and our family. Like, we recognize that we don't do this alone. And as women, knowing what to prioritize and when you have to do something versus when you can ask for help for something is very hard, but also really important, figuring that balance out. And I wish I had a secret formula for you, but I don't.
Yeah.
It's just knowing that you can't do these kind of things if you're going to try to do everything.
Right.
And if they're eating a delicious warm meal, it doesn't matter if you made it. Now, I like to cook, so like sometimes I want to, but if it's getting done and it's getting done well, farm that stuff out and then be present when they need a shoulder to cry on or a person to laugh with or dance partner. Like, that's when you have to show up.
Right. Yeah. One of my mentors once told me to make money to pay people to do the things you don't necessarily want to do. And so, for example, we pay for someone to clean the house because I'd rather just be watching TV with my kids instead of vacuuming the floor. You know what I mean? So it's whatever you can do.
Yes, I will say, though, that the nanny that we have, I don't feel like it's the stuff that I don't want to do.
Right,
I realize that the stuff that she does is wonderful stuff, right? She is chatting with them in the car. She's taking them to a playground. Like, there's just only one of me. And in some ways, she's an extension of me.
Yeah.
Even though, and I feel very indebted to people who are willing to step up and be part of our family and be part of our lives that way. It's an intensely personal, intimate relationship, but it's one that I owe a huge debt of gratitude for, because I can't help the people who need rides or the people in Africa if there's only one.
Right, if there's only one.
It's 4 kids.
Yeah, we had a nanny just like Rebecca that you have. Everybody needs a Rebecca, right? We had a nanny. There's only one. She's like, there's only one. But we had a nanny that was very special to us, like that, and an extension of our family. She still comes for Christmas, and we surprise the kids every year. They have no idea that she's coming, and it's just amazing that we have that connection, that relationship with her. And after, sadly, she had to leave to go be closer to her family in a different state. And we just did not get anybody else. Yes, we were like, well,
and that
if we don't have her, that was one of our secrets for being able to do everything that we've done. We had help. And my in-laws live with us as well. So that's a big help for us. And even though I tell them,
it's worth saying, we're very blessed that grandparents are a very prominent part of my kids' lives. My parents, in particular, show up. They're here multiple nights a week. They roll up their sleeves. They're a huge part of my kids' lives, my life, even as an adult. And so, and as you heard, they're both doctors. So they have every reason to not be here, and they are.
And my in-laws have been with us almost 10 years now. And sometimes we have to say, you're granny, not the nanny. Like, just be a grandmother, and just relax. You don't have to do everything. Just relax, But she loves it. She did daycare for 30 years or so. So that's what she does anyway. And these are her babies. So it's just been a blessing to be able to have that. Now, we talked a lot about policy work, philanthropy work, you as a mom, and this is Women Winning Worldwide. And so I ask everyone in this particular moment, what does women winning mean to you?
I think it means that you are fulfilling what you dreamed of in your life, right? And that's very personal and very specific to a person. But it also means identifying what hasn't quite met those expectations and working on it, right? And making sure that you are the person that you want to be, and you're not just settling for the person that you are. I personally have a philosophy that I'd like to share more often than I do, which is about hanging on to those childlike characteristics. I think we as adults, especially people with so many responsibilities, tend to lose that silliness, that joy, the curiosity, the lack of inhibition. And I really think that women especially would be happier and more successful if they remembered to be joyful, to have fun. And I know that sounds maybe simplistic, but I really believe it. And that's maybe why I have so many kids. They keep reminding us, like, that's good energy, right? It's really good to remember that the birds are still beautiful and that the bug crawling on the counter is fascinating and not something that we need to just, do away with. So that's important to me. But really winning means fulfilling those dreams, whether that's to start your own business, whether it's, to be a doctor, a lawyer, a mom, a good friend, but really also identifying what problems are you uniquely capable of solving, of helping with, and going after it. Don't be scared. Yeah, don't be scared. No. Now, this was an amazing conversation. We are in Women's History Month. You have done so much for all of us, women, girls, here, abroad.
The one thing that I will always remember from this conversation is something that your dad taught you, though. Living a life well lived. And as we go through this month, the rest of 2023, that is something that I'm going to hold on to, because sometimes we do get caught up in business and work and all these other things. And it's the simple things that you just talked about that really resonate a woman winning today. So thank you so much for this conversation with all of us today. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Andrea Wolf, changing the world one woman at a time and helping women save time and live better. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
The road to a desirable life and success is a tumultuous one, and it includes moments where we feel discouraged and derailed. In times like this, it helps to remind yourself of your why. Why do you want this? Why did you start? Why does it matter? What is waiting for you at the end of the rainbow? And who are you doing this for? Find your why, and you'll find your resilience to just keep going. Well, that's it for today's episode. Join us next time, and don't forget to like and share at W3 Community on all social platforms, and subscribe to our podcast on our W3 Community YouTube channel. I'm your host, Chanelle Burt, helping you save time and live better.